Alright, that's there so that I could see that. Actually, is that viewable in my... Oh god, yeah. I'm just going to make you sleep for a bit, because otherwise the reflection will be in there. And this is still really quiet even though all the inputs are up. Oh god. Real Mickey Mouse operation. Anyway, hi, yeah. This YouTube channel that I'm currently hosting these videos on, that you're currently subscribed to, thank you very much. It's been around since about 2006, and at first I used it to put up gig videos from when I would, you know, still be in bands, play music, actually do gigs, just back in the day. And then there was a period of nothing till I bought Fraps and started recording myself playing video games. And then I started recording myself playing video games with friends. That was mostly to prove that I actually have friends. And then it's recently been psychology video essays. And at any point during the last 14 years, I could have just... 14 years. Oh god, I've been online too long. I've actually been online since like 96, 98. Anyway, at any point during those years, I could have just started another channel. I could have thought, right, video game footage is all over there, video game footage with friends is over there, my music stuff's all over here. But instead, it's all on this one bit. It's all on this one channel. And this video is about why. Actually, no, wait, I mean, it's about the sunk cost bias and why people still stick with things that are going on, don't go away. The brain being compared to a computer is a thing that happens so often within psychology that I honestly think it should be considered psychology's Wilhelm scream. Still, I have to admit it works to convey the concept of the brain as an organ which processes an immense amount of data. And just like a computer needs a source of power to keep running, the brain also requires energy in order to keep processing information. And in order to conserve its available energy, our brains rely on certain mental shortcuts to help us make decisions quickly without needing to expend too much energy. Now, most of the time, these are just simple, daily, regular, routine decisions like which route you'll take to work, what you'll have for tea, what clothes you'll wear that day. You know, the dull daily life stuff like that. And because these decisions are so routine, the recall of associated information can be done quickly and with very little risk of inaccuracy in recall or the influence of other such outside behavioural motivators, which might lead to maladaptive decision making. Basically, because you make these decisions so often, you could probably make them again without having to expend the energy and resources needed to evaluate everything every time you make that decision. Now, when it comes to decision making, if we're making purely rational choices, then we really shouldn't consider past investments when we're making future decisions. But we actually violate this rule quite a bit. This is a phenomenon known as the sunk cost bias. Sunk cost bias is also heavily considered in economic theory, such as prospect theory and loss aversion proposed by Kahneman and Tversky in 1979. As an important aspect of sunk cost bias is that cost is sunk if it cannot be recovered. There's no bias if you can recover 100% of your investment should you later change your mind. Now, for another perspective, Festinger ties it to cognitive dissonance, arguing that the fear of the unpleasantness of admitting you made a mistake and that the investment that you've sunk so far has been wasted induces people to irrationally revise their assessments of the value of future investment. Now, basically, it's easier for us to think, if I keep plugging away at this, it'll eventually work out, than it is to think, I f***ed up and need to change something. We'll come back to Festinger at another time because When Prophecy Fails is a really good book. There's a lot to talk about there, and I do kind of want to do a video on it in future. So yeah, we'll get to that. But for now, I want to stick with Kahneman and Tversky for a little bit longer because, as I mentioned, they proposed a concept called loss aversion, which can broadly be summed up as losses hurt more than equivalent gains feel good. There's a great way to illustrate this, and it's with a coin toss. Let's say... Oh, they nearly rolled off and they didn't. So lucky. Let's say that I'm going to toss a coin and bet on the outcome. It's a thing that many people have done before. Let's say every time it's heads you win and every time it's tails you lose. Every time you lose a tenner. How much would you have to win in order for you to want to take the bet? I mean, logically, should only be another tenner, right? I mean, that way you're either going to win or you're going to lose. There's going to be no difference. But most people want 20. And that's because losses hurt more. So the gains have to be very good for us to want to take that bet in the first place. We try to avoid loss wherever possible. But every now and then, there'll come a potential outcome, a potential reward that will think, yeah, I'll give it a go. I mean, what are the odds of you actually winning the lottery compared to how many people play? Yeah, that'll do. Actually, you know what, looking at it, these coins both have just tails on them. A lot of research into sunk cost involves financial decisions, because nerds love numbers and money gives us those numbers when we're looking into influences on our decision making. However, sunk cost bias can also affect other decisions we make in our lives, and it can manifest in ways that don't necessarily involve financial activity. We're talking a wide range of behaviours, like continuing to support a football club even though they've been doing for years, or still watching a TV show even though the last few seasons have been crap, even who you're going to vote for come election time. It can even affect geopolitical decisions that impact millions of lives, like how long should our troops be in Afghanistan for, when will Guantanamo Bay be closed, why does Piers Morgan keep getting work, you know, the really serious and life-changing decisions. Behavioural manifestations of sunk cost are a little trickier to track and identify than those related to money, but establishing a relationship with some form of financial cost can help, because the way we think about money can be applied to our behavioural investments. DeVoe and Pfeffer found that people paid hourly use different mental accounting standards for their behavioural investments than people who are salaried. If you consider a behavioural choice as not just a binary decision, but the sum of a multitude of investments, such as the time you'll have to take out of your life, the amount of your attention you'll have to devote to it, the physical energy you will use doing it, even the mental resources you've expended so far in weighing up the decision you'll be making, that this method of thinking can help make identifying behavioural sunk costs a little easier. Okay, so while I was writing this video, I realised that you can make the argument that Shakespeare is aware of the sunk cost bias, because in Macbeth, Act 3, Scene 4, Macbeth says, and I quote, "I am in blood, stepped in so far that, should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as go over." See, this point in the story, Macbeth's pretty committed. He's already killed the king and had his best mate offed as well. So, you know, the costs that he has sunk cannot be recovered. He's committed to seeing the witch's prophecy coming true. He can't go back. That's it. He's a victim of the sunk cost bias. Now, officially, the point I'm making here is that depictions of our psychological drives and impulses are common in all sorts of cultural and other forms of media. They're everywhere because they're an inherent part of us, and so they're part of the human condition. They're part of our experience and our lives, no matter what time in history you are born into. But unofficially, I just wanted to appear more intellectual and literate than I actually am, so if you'll excuse me. Alright, that'll do. Yeah, Josh, by the way, it is just training mode, and I have absolutely no idea why I'm using this, because it's just not helping. Neuropsychology time! I need like a jingle or like a thing to flash up every time I get to this part of my scripts, because you have to discuss neuropsychology most of the time, so it could be a bit. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody else, no matter what your gender identity, are you ready to dive deep into the mind and unravel all its secrets and mysteries? Because it's the neuropsychology bit! Anyway, decision-making typically involves activity in a number of prefrontal, striatal and limbic areas of the brain. These are areas of the brain which handle and process information and evaluate future courses of action based on that information. In 2014, Hal and Schwab had participants take part in a hypothetical investment task which showed potential projects they could either invest in or skip. If they invested, they were told either that the project had been a success or that further investment in the project was needed. fMRI scans taken of the participants showed that the amount of activity within these regions changed when a previous investment had been made. They specifically showed reduced activity in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. So, when participants had made a decision to invest and were told they needed to invest again, the area of the brain which considers the value and cost of potential actions isn't as activated as it is when a new investment is presented, and participants became more likely to invest again regardless of the value of other alternatives. Now, obviously there are other behavioural motivations at play when we make decisions. For example, brand loyalty can often be explained by social identity theory. But this video is about sunk cost, so that's been our focus here. From an outsider's perspective, these behaviours are obviously maladaptive, but from the position of the individual in question, such behaviours can be rationally justified. Maybe you feel that your decision making has remained consistent throughout and don't wish to change that, or that writing off lost resources is actually wasteful and you wish to avoid unnecessary waste. I raise this point because it might seem easy for us to dismiss the problems faced by people who are heavily invested in a losing endeavour and feel confident that we personally would never be so oblivious to fall for such an obvious con, but a different perspective can easily justify continued investment in something for a multitude of reasons, all of which can appear entirely rational and understandable. It's difficult to admit you've made a mistake, and people struggling to accept that need help and support, not our dismissive scorn. Whenever we talk about psychological things, it's easy to get lost in the whole lecture hall, blackboard theory of it all, and forget that there is a human cost attached, because we're dealing with human impulses, human cognitive processes, and human biases. And in particular, multi-level marketing schemes are very effective at preying on people who are susceptible to the sunk cost bias. You can end up in many, many thousands of pounds or dollars or whatever your currency is of debt, and it can be quite difficult to get out of, and as such it can have a huge impact on your life. And it's not just that though, it can manifest itself in other ways. It can manifest itself in ways that see you stuck to an exploitative contract for your rent, or your gas and electric, or your phone bill, or you could have a ISP like Virgin Media. You could even pursue a course of treatment that's not working for you because you think it'll start working soon, and instead of seeking real medical treatment that could actually help, you end up spending thousands on homeopathy, which, you know, you might as well just be drinking water at that point. I mean, ultimately, sunk cost bias is just one of a number of behavioural biases that we have, and like most of them, it's just fine doing its thing on its own. It's there with us for most of our lives, all of our lives after it develops, but it does its thing, and most of the time it's fine because you're just picking out what clothes you want to wear or what you're going to have for tea. But when it goes wrong, it can be a really powerful behavioural motivator that can see you actively harming your life, and it's something that you have to be aware of, because it's so effective at making you behave in a manner that is contradictory to your own self-interest. So that's why we still talk about the sunk cost bias. It's why I still upload videos on a 14-year-old YouTube channel. Another way to visualise the sunk cost is with a musical instrument. Let's say you want to learn how to play guitar. So you spend 150 to 200 quid on a guitar, you spend another 100 to 200 on lessons, but after a month or so you start to think, hang on a minute, it's not quite as easy as I thought it would be to become Jimi Hendrix, and it's probably going to take a while until I'm anywhere near that level of competence and skill. So what do you do in that situation? Do you give up, try to recoup some of your loss by flogging your guitar, even though you're not going to get all your money back? You're certainly not going to get your money back for the lessons you've had, and you're definitely not going to get back the time over the month or so that you've spent actually trying to learn how to play it. Or do you persist with it and think, well, yeah, okay, I'll dedicate those following months and years of practice and the potential costs that it will incur for new strings and new picks and new leads and dealing with other bandmates. So what do you do in that situation? Well, you know, if you are me, then you only ended up playing your instrument because you wanted to form a band and didn't know anyone who was a bassist, so you thought, I'll do it, it can't be that hard. So you just keep getting drunk and arguing with the drummer while the guitarist sits there and hates you both. I'm really sorry, Scott and Nige. I'm really sorry. Such a